Okay, hey, I think it's April 13th, 14th, which means it's either the 13th or the 14th day of National Poetry Month, um, and some more of Dante and the Inferno. Yesterday was parent teacher conferences, and I got home at like 9, so no Dante last night, but that's okay. This is going to be, let's read most of the days of National Poetry Month, and let's see how much of this we get through. And maybe I'll just keep reading just to see, I don't know how long I want to carry on. Anyway, if you remember from 2 nights ago, when we finally got to a name that I could pronounce, we were, let's see, Michael Scott, right. And we ended in a special part of hell that was reserved for people who tried to tell the future. And yeah, and I got to do a little nerdy footnote exploration because I really just had to know what the deal was with Michael Scott because he was so out of place. He was the June, definitely an advisor to Frederick II of Sicily, maybe like a soothsayer, necromancer. Anyway, fascinating character. All that said, I am not going to stand here and preamble and ramble. So I don't think the animals would stand for it, and I need to get the show on the road tonight. So 21 through 24, here we go. 21, still in the 8th circle, which bears the name of Male Bolge. They look down from the bridge that passes over its 5th gulf. That passes over its 5th gulf upon the barrators or public peculators. These are plunged in a lake of boiling pitch and guarded by demons to whom Virgil, leaving Dante apart, presents himself. And the license being obtained to pass onward, both pursue their way. So Male Bolge. Remember he keeps calling these Bolgia. So the bad Bolgia. Evil Bolgia. Okay. 21. From bridge to bridge thus, speaking other things of which my comedy cares not to sing, we came along and held the summit when we halted to behold another fissure of Malabolge and other vain laments. And I beheld it marvelously dark. Ooh, June? Etymologically, lament is connected to maybe the Hebrew word, I think, for why, which just is really poignant to me. So lamenting is like asking why. Anyway. And I beheld it marvelously dark, as in the arsenal of the Venetians, boils in the winter the tenacious pitch to smear their unsound vessels o'er again, for sail they cannot. And instead thereof one makes his vessel new, and one recalks the ribs of that which many a voyage has made. One hammers at the prow, one at the stern, this one makes oars, and that one cordage twists, another mends the mainsail and the mizzen. Thus, not by fire, but by the art divine, was boiling down below there a dense pitch, which upon every side the bank belimed. I saw it, but I did not see within it aught but the bubbles that the boiling raised, and all swell up and resubside compressed. The while below there fixedly I gazed, my leader crying out, "Beware, beware!" Drew me unto himself from where I stood. Then I turned around as one who is impatient to see what it behooves him to escape, and whom sudden terror doth unman who, while he looks, delays not his departure. And I behind beheld us a black devil running along upon the crag approach. Ah, how ferocious was he in his aspect, and how he seemed to me in action ruthless, with open wings and light upon his feet. His shoulders, which sharp pointed were and high, a sinner did encumber with both haunches, and he held clutched the sinews of the feet. Wow. From off our bridge, he said, Malebranche, behold one of the elders of Saint Zita, plunge from beneath, for I return for others unto that town which is well furnished with them. All there are bariters except Bonturo, and no into yes, for money there is changed. He hurled him down and over the hard crag turned round. Never was a mastiff loosened in so much hurry to pursue a thief. The other sank and rose again face downward. But the demons, under cover of the bridge, cried, here the Santo Volto has no place. Here swims one otherwise than in the Circio, therefore. Here one swims otherwise than in the Circio. Therefore, if for our gaffs thou wishest not, do not uplift thyself above the pitch. They seized him then with more than 100 rakes. They said, it here behooves thee to dance covered, that if thou canst, thou secretly mayest pilfer. Not otherwise the cooks their scullions make immerse into the middle of the cauldron the meat with hooks, so that it may not float. Said the good master to me, that it be not apparent thou art here, crouch thyself down behind a jag, that thou mayest have some screen. And for no outrage that is done to me, be thou afraid, because these things I know. For once before was I in such a scuffle. Then he passed on beyond the bridge's head, and as upon the 6th bank he arrived, need was for him to have a steadfast front. With the same fury and the same uproar, as dogs leap out upon a mendicant who on a sudden begs where'er he stops, they issued from beneath the little bridge and turned against him all their grappling irons. But he cried out, be none of you malignant. Before those hooks of yours lay hold of me, let one of you step forward who may hear me, and then take counsel as to grappling me. They all cried, let Malakota go. Whereat one started, and the rest stood still. And he came to him, saying, what avails it? Thinkest thou, Malakota, to behold me advanced into this place? My master said. Safe hitherto from all your skill of fence, without the will divine and fate auspicious. Let me go in, for it in heaven is willed that I another show this savage road. Then was his arrogance so humbled in him that he let fall his grapnel at his feet, and to the others said, now strike him not. And unto me, my guide, O thou who sittest among the splinters of the bridge crouched down, securely now return to me again. Wherefore I started and came swiftly to him, and all the devils forward thrust themselves, so that I feared they would not keep their compact. And thus beheld I once afraid the soldiers who issued under safeguard from Caprona, seeing themselves among so many foes. Close did I press myself with all my person beside my leader, and turned not mine eyes from off their countenance, which was not good. They lowered their rakes, and wilt thou have me hit him, they said to one another, on the rump? And answered, yes, see that thou nick him with it. But the same demon who was holding parley with my conductor turned him very quickly and said, be quiet, Scarmiglione. Then said to us, you can no further go forward upon this crag, because it is lying all shattered at the bottom, the 6th arch. And if it still doth please you to go onward, pursue your way along upon this rock. Near is another crag that yields a path. Yesterday, 5 hours later than this hour, 1,226 years were complete, that here the way was broken. I send in that direction some of mine to see if anyone doth err himself. Go ye with them, for they will not be vicious. Step forward, Alicino and Calcabrina. Began he to cry out, and thou, Cagnazzo, and Barbaricia, do thou guide the 10. Come forward, Libicoco, and Dragignazzo, and Tuscid Chiriato, and Graffiacane, and Farfarello, and Mad Rubicante. Search ye all around about the boiling pitch. Let these be safe as far as the next crag, that all unbroken passes or the dens. Oh me, what is it, master, that I see? Pray let us go, I said, without an escort, if thou knowest how, since for myself I ask none. If thou art as observant as thy wont is, dost thou not see that they do gnash their teeth, and with their brows are threatening woe to us? And he came to me, I will not have thee fear. Let them gnash on according to their fancy, because they do it for those boiling wretches. Along the left-hand dike they wheeled about, but first had each one thrust his tongue between his teeth towards their leader for a signal. And he had made a trumpet of his rump. This feels like a farce. I don't know if it's meant to or not. Anyway, 22. Virgil and Dante proceed, accompanied by the demons, to see other sinners of the same description in the same gulf. The scheme of Champolo, one of these, to escape from the demons who had laid hold on him. I have erewhile seen horsemen moving camp begin the storming and their muster make, and sometimes starting off for their escape. Vaunt couriers have I seen upon your land, O Aretines, and foragers go forth, tournament stricken, and the joustings run, sometimes with trumpets and sometimes with bells, with kettle drums and signals of the castles, and with our own and with outlandish things, but never yet with bagpipe so uncouth did I see horsemen move, nor infantry, nor ship by any sign of land or star. We went upon our way with the 10 demons, savage company, but in the church with saints, and in the tavern with the gluttons. Ever upon the pitch was my intent to see the whole condition of the Bolgia, and of the people who therein were burned, even as the dolphins, when they make a sign to mariners by arching of the back, that they should counsel take to save their vessel. Thus, sometimes, to alleviate his pain, one of the sinners would display his back, and in less time conceal it than it lightens. June, hey, June. As on the brink of water in a ditch, the frogs stand only with their muzzles out, so that they hide their feet in other bulk, so upon every side the sinners stood. But ever, as Barbaricha near them came, thus underneath the boiling they withdrew. I saw, and still my heart doth shudder at it, one waiting thus, even as it comes to pass, one frog remains and down another dives. And Graphiacan, who most confronted him, grappled him by his tresses smeared with pitch, and drew him up so that he seemed an otter. I knew before the names of all of them, so I had noted them when they were chosen, and when they called each other, listened how. O Rubicante, see that thou do lay the claws upon him, so that thou mayest slay him, cried all together the accursed ones. And I, my master, see to it, if thou canst, that thou mayest know who is the luckless wight, thus come into his adversary's hands. Near to the side of him my leader drew, asked of him whence he was, and he replied, I in the kingdom of Navarre was born. My mother placed me servant to a lord, for she had borne me to a ribald knave, destroyer of himself and of all things. Then I domestic was of good King Tybalt. I set me there to practice barratry, for which I pay the reckoning in this heat. And Chiriato, from whose mouth projected on either side a tusk as in a boar, caused him to feel how one of them could rip. Among malicious cats the mouse had come, and Barbaricha clasped him in his arms and said, stand ye aside while I enfork him. And to my master he turned round his face. Ask him again, he said, if more thou wish to know from him before someone destroy him. The guide, now tell then of the other culprits. Knowest thou anyone who is a Latian under the pitch? And he, I separated lately from one who was a neighbor to it. Would that I still were covered up with him, for neither claw nor grapnel should I fear. And Livio Coco, we have borne too much. And with his grappling iron seized his arm, so that by rending he tore off a tendon. Dragignazzo. There we go. Dragignazzo, that's it. Wished to pounce upon him down at the legs, whence their decurion turned round and round about with evil look. When they somewhat were pacified again of him, who still was looking his way round, who still was looking at his wound, demanded my conductor without stay. Who was that one from whom a luckless parting thou sayest thou hast made to come ashore? And he replied, It was the friar Gomita, he of Galura, vessel of all fraud, who had the enemies of his lord in hand, and dealt so with them, each exults thereat. Money he took and let them smoothly off, as he says, and in other offices a barator was he, not mean, but sovereign. Foregathers with him one Don Michael Zanche of Logodoro, and of Sardinia, to gossip never to do their and of Sardinia, to gossip and never do their tongue feel tired. Oh me, see that one, how he grinds his teeth. Still farther I would speak, but am afraid lest he so scratch my itch be making ready. And the great provost turned to Farfarello, who rolled his eyes about as if to strike, said, stand aside there, thou malicious bird, if thou desire either to see or hear the terror-stricken recommenced Huron, Tuscans or Lombards, I will make them come, but let the Malebranche cease a little, so that these may not their revenges fear. And I, down sitting in this very place, for one that I am, will make 7 to come, when I shall whistle, as our custom is, to do whenever one of us emerges. Pagnazzo, at these words, his muzzle lifted, shaking his head, and said, just hear the trick which he has thought of, down to throw himself. Whence he, who snares in great abundance had, responded, I by too far cunning am, when I procure for mine a greater sadness. Alekin held not in, but running counter unto the rest, said to him, if thou dive, I will not follow thee upon the gallop, but I will beat my wing above the pitch. The height be left, and be the bank a shield, to see if thou alone dost countervail us. O thou who readest, thou shalt hear new sport. Each to the other side his eyes averted. He first, who most reluctant was to do it. The Navarrese selected well his time, planted his feet on land, and in a moment leaped and released himself from their design, whereat each one was suddenly stung with shame, but he most who was cause of the defeat. Therefore he moved and cried, thou art overtaken. But little it availed, for wings could not outstrip the fear. The other one went under, and flying upward as his breast directed. Not otherwise the duck upon a sudden dives under, when the falcon is approaching. And upward he returneth cross and weary, infuriate at the mockery. Calcabrina flying behind him followed close, desirous the other should escape to have a quarrel. And when the barator had disappeared, he turned his talons upon his companion, and grappled with him right above the moat. But sooth, the other was a doughty sparhawk to clapper claw him well, and both of them fell in the middle of the boiling pond. A sudden intercessor was the heat, but ne'ertheless of rising there was not, to such a degree they had their wings belimed. Lamenting with the others, Barbaricia made 4 of them fly to the other side with all their gas, and very speedily that this side and that they to their post descended. They stretched their hooks toward the pitch ensnared, who were already baked within the crust, and in this manner busied did we leave them. '23. The enraged demons pursue Dante, but he is preserved from them by Virgil. On reaching the 6th gulf, he beholds the punishment of the hypocrites, which is to pace continually around the gulf, under the pressure of caps and hoods that are gilt on the outside, but leaden within. He is addressed by 2 of these, Catalano and Loderingo, knights of St. Mary, otherwise called joyous friars of Bologna. Caiaphas is seen fixed to a cross on the ground, and lies so stretched along the way that all tread on him in passing. Canto 23. Silent, alone, and without company we went, the one in front, the other after, as go the minor friars along their way. Upon the fable of Aesop was directed my thought, by reason of the present quarrel, where he has spoken of the frog and the mouse. For Mo and Isa are not more alike than this one is of that, if well we couple end and beginning with a steadfast mind. And even as one thought from another springs, so afterward from that was born another, which the first fear within me double made. Thus did I ponder. These on our account are laughed to scorn with injury and scoffed so great that much I think it must annoy them. If anger be engrafted on ill will, They will come after us more merciless than dog upon the leveret, which he seizes. I felt my hair stand all on end already with terror, and stood backwardly intent, when said I, Master, if thou hidest not thyself and me forthwith, of Malebranche I am in dread. We have them now behind us. I so imagine them, I already feel them. And he, if I were made of leaded glass, thine outward image I could not attract sooner to me than I imprint the inner. Just now thy thoughts came in among my own with similar attitude and similar face, so that of both one counsel soul I made. If peradventure the right bank so slope that we to the next bulge can descend, we shall escape from the imagined chase. Not yet he finished rendering such opinion when I beheld them come with outstretched wings, not far remote, with will to seize upon us. My leader on a sudden seized me up, even as a mother who by noise is wakened and close behind her sees the enkindled flames, who takes her son and flies and does not stop, having more care of him than of herself, so that she clothes her only with a shift. And downward from the top of the hard bank, supine he gave him to the pendant rock, that one side of the other bulge walls. Never ran so swiftly water through a sluice to turn the wheel of any land-built mill when nearest to the paddles it approaches, as did my master down along that border, bearing me with him on his breast away as his own son, and not as a companion. Hardly the bed of the ravine below his feet had reached ere they had reached the hill right over us, but he was not afraid, for the high providence which had ordained to place him ministers of the fifth mote, power of thence departing took from all. A painted people there below we found, who went about with footsteps very slow, weeping in their semblance tired and vanquished. They had on mantles and with hoods low down before their eyes, and fashioned of the cut that in Cologne they for the monks are made. Without they gilded are, so that it dazzles, but inwardly all leaden and so heavy that Frederick used to put them on of straw. O everlastingly fatiguing mantle! Again we turned us, still to the left hand, along with them, intent on their sad plaints. But owing to the weight that weary folk came on so tardily, that we were new in company at each motion of the haunch. Whence I unto my leader, see thou find some one who may by deed or name be known, and thus in going move thine eye about. And one who understood the Tuscan speech cried to us from behind, Stay ye your feet, ye who so run athwart the dusky air. Perhaps thou'lt have from me what thou demandest. Whereat the leader turned him and said, Wait, and then according to his pace proceed. I stopped, and two beheld I show great haste of spirit in their faces to be with me. But the burden and the narrow way delayed them. When they came up, along with an eye askance, they scanned me without uttering a word, then to each other turned and said together, He by the action of his throat seems living, and if they dead are, by what privilege go they uncovered by the heavy stole? Then said to me, Tuscan, who to the college of miserable hypocrites art come, do not disdain to tell us who thou art. And I to them, born was I and grew up in the great town on the fair river of Arno, and with the body am I've always had. But who are ye in whom there trickles down along your cheeks such grief as I behold? And what pain is upon you that so sparkles? And one replied to me, These orange cloaks are made of lead so heavy that the weights cause in this way their balances to creak. Frati Guadenti were we, and Bolognese, I Catalano, and he Lotharingo named, and together taken by thy city, as the wont is to take one man alone for maintenance of its peace. And we were such that still it is apparent round Gardingo. O friars, began I, you are iniquitous, but said no more, for to mine eyes there rushed one crucified with 3 stakes on the ground. When me he saw, he writhed himself all over, blowing into his beard with suspirations. And the friar Catalan, who noticed this, said to me, This transfixed one who thou seest counseled the Pharisees that it was meet to put one man to torture for the people. Crosswise and naked is he on the path, as thou perceivest, and he needs must feel, whoever passes, first how much he weighs, and in like mode his father-in-law is punished within this mote, and the others of the council, for which the Jews was a malignant seed. And thereupon I saw Virgilius marvel o'er him who was extended on the cross so vilely in eternal banishment. Then he directed to the friar this voice: Be not displeased, if granted thee, to tell us if to the right hand any pass slope down by which we two may issue forth from here, without constraining some of the black angels to come and extricate us from this deep. Then he made answer: Nearer than thou hopest, there is a rock that forth from the great circle proceeds and crosses all the cruel valleys, save that at this 'tis broken, and does not bridge it. You will be able to mount upon the ruin that sidelong slopes and at the bottom rises. The leader stood a while with head bowed down, then said, The business badly he recounted, who grapples with his hook the sinners yonder. And the friar: Many of the devil's vices once I heard at Bologna, and among them that he's a liar and the father of lies. Thereat my leader with great strides went on, somewhat disturbed by anger in his looks, whence from the heavy laden I departed after the prince of his beloved feet. Canto 24. Under the escort of his faithful master, Dante, not without difficulty, makes his way out of the sixth gulf, and in the seventh sees the robbers tormented by venomous and pestilent serpents. The soul of Bonifucci, who had pillaged the sacristy of St. James in Pistoia, predicts some calamities that impended over that city and over the Florentines. In that part of the youthful year wherein the sun his locks beneath Aquarius tempers, and now the nights draw near to half the day, what time the hoarfrost copies on the ground the outward semblance of her sister white, but little lasts the temper of her pen. The husbandman, whose forage faileth him, rises and looks, and seeth the champagne all gleaming white, whereat he beats his flank, returns indoors, and up and down laments like a poor wretch who knows not what to do. Then he returns, and hope revives again, seeing the world has changed its countenance in little time, and takes his shepherd's crook, and forth the little lambs to pasture drives. Thus did the master fill me with alarm when I beheld his forehead so disturbed, and to the ailment came as soon the plaster. For as we came unto the ruined bridge, the leader turned to me with that sweet look which at the mountain's foot I first beheld. His arms he opened, after some advisement within himself elected, looking first well at the ruin, and laid hold of me. And even as he who acts and meditates, for I it seems that he provides beforehand, so upward lifting me toward the summit of a huge rock, he scanned another crag, saying, To that one grapple afterwards, but first try if 'tis such that it will hold thee. This was no path for one clothed with a cloak, for hardly we, he light and I pushed upward, were able to ascend from jag to jag. And had it not been that upon that precinct shorter was the ascent than on the other, he I know not, but I had been dead beat. But because Malebolge towards the mouth of the profoundest well is all inclining, the structure of each valley doth import that one bank rises and the other sinks. Still we arrived at length upon the point wherefrom the last stone breaks itself asunder. The breath was from my lungs so milked away when I was up that I could go no farther. Nay, I sat down upon my first arrival. Now it behooves thee thus to put off sloth, my master said, for sitting upon down or under quilt one cometh not to fame, withouten which whoso his life consumes, such vestige leaveth of himself on earth, as smoke in air or in the water foam. And therefore raise thee up, o'ercome the anguish with spirit that overcometh every battle, if with its heavy body it sink not. A longer stairway it behooves thee mount. 'Tis not enough from these to have departed. Let it avail thee if thou understand me. Then I uprose, showing myself provided better with breath than I did feel myself, and said, Go on, for I am strong and bold. Upward we took our way along the crag, which jagged was and narrow and difficult, and more precipitous far than that before. Speaking I went, not to appear exhausted, whereat a voice from the next moat came forth, not well adapted to articulate words. I know not what it said, though where the back I now was of the arch that passes there, but he seemed moved to anger who was speaking. I was bent downward, but my living eyes could not attain the bottom for the dark. Wherefore I, Master, see that thou arrive at the next round, and let us descend the wall. For as from hence I hear and understand not, so I look down and nothing I distinguish. Other response, he said, I make thee not, except the doing. For the modest asking ought to be followed by the deed in silence. We from the bridge descended at its head, where it connects itself with the eighth bank. And then was manifest to me the Bolgia. And I beheld therein a terrible throng of serpents, and of such a monstrous kind that the remembrance still congeals my blood. Let Libya boast no longer with her sand. For it, Calidri, Jaculi, Fere, she breathes with King Chencri and with Amphispana. Neither so many plagues nor so malignant ere showed she with all Ethiopia, nor with whatever on the Red Sea is. Among this cruel and most dismal throng, people were running naked and affrighted, without the hope of hole or heliotrope. They had their hands with serpents bound behind them. These riveted upon their reins the tail and head, and were in front of them entwined. And lo, at one who was upon our side, there darted forth a serpent, which transfixed him there where the neck is knotted to the shoulders. No oar so quickly ere, nor eye was written, as he took fire and burned, and ashes wholly behooved it that in falling he became. And when he on the ground was thus destroyed, the ashes drew together, and of themselves into himself they instantly returned. Even thus by the great sages 'tis confessed the phoenix dies and then is born again when it approaches its 500th year. And herb or grain it feeds not in its life, but only on tears of incense and amomum, and nard and myrrh are its last winding sheet. And as he is who falls and knows not how, by force of demons who to earth down drag him, or other appellation that binds man, when he arises and around him looks, wholly bewildered by the mighty anguish which he has suffered, and in looking sighs. Such was that sinner after he had risen. Justice of God, how severe it is that blows like these in vengeance poureth down. The guide thereafter asked him who he was, whence he replied, I reigned from Tuscany a short time since I came into this cruel gorge. A bestial life and not a human pleased me, even as the mule I was. I am Vani Fucci, beast, and Pistoia was my worthy den. And I unto the guide, tell him to stir not and ask what crime has thrust him here below, for once a man of blood and wrath I saw him. And the sinner who had heard dissembled not, but unto me directed mind and face, and with a melancholy shame was painted. Then said, it pains me more that thou hast caught me amid this misery where thou seest me, than when I from the other life was taken. If thou demandest, I cannot deny. So low am I put down because I robbed the sacristy of the fair ornaments, and falsely once 'twas laid upon another. And that thou mayest not such a sight enjoy, if thou shalt e'er be out of the dark places, thine ears to my announcement ope and hear. Pistoia first of Neri groweth meager, then Florence doth renew her men and manners. Mars draws a vapor up from Val di Magra, which is with turbid clouds enveloped round, and with impetuous and bitter tempest over Campo Pisan shall be the battle, when it shall suddenly rend the mist asunder, so that each Bianco shall thereby be smitten. And this I've said that it may give thee pain. Okay, that was all the Dante I can manage tonight, and managed it pretty meagerly, but there you have it. So much wildness in this particular set of cantos, but what really stood out to me was the fact that Dante is on basically a forced march with Virgil, and is embarrassed and ashamed and afraid of like seeming weak or out of shape, so he keeps going after Virgil, chides him for taking some rest. So anyway, very human moment. I have definitely experienced that before myself. I suspect you probably have too. At any rate, until tomorrow, more Dante then.